Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna watch Napoleon's Bloodiest Day at Borodino 1812. We saw this in the previous Napoleon episode, that Napoleon and the Russians were converging out of Moscow, right? West of Moscow at Borodino. It's gonna be very interesting to see this. Original videos down below and let's go.
This Epic History TV video is brought to you by Magellan TV, the documentary streaming service.
Of all my 50 battles, the most terrible one was the one I fought at Borodino. Okay. Wow.
Russia, 1812. Napoleon invades his former ally with the largest army Europe has ever seen. But for the French Emperor, the decisive blow remains frustratingly beyond reach. Russia's resilience is unlike anything he's ever encountered. And
I mean, that's a very important point, right? Technically, although it hasn't bloomed yet, technically he has already seen some sort of resilience in the Spanish campaign or conquest, whatever you want to call it, right? He saw that the people rose up, guerrillas, and the military as well were a thorn in his back, right? So he has seen it. Maybe not. I mean, at 1812, it has bloomed, the Spanish campaign, right? So it has bloomed, yeah. Okay, so sure, Napoleon versus Russia is very difficult, but I mean, in Spain, same thing. But okay, let's go.
as winter closes in, his army begins the most infamous retreat in history.
Wow, look at these portraits.
September 1812. 10 weeks had passed since Napoleon invaded Russia with more than 500,000 men.
Wow.
The French Emperor wanted a quick victory over the Russians, one that would force Emperor Alexander to make peace and agree to French terms. But at Vitebsk and then Smolensk, the outnumbered Russian army had narrowly escaped his clutches. The holy city of Smolensk had been virtually destroyed.
Yep. Sadly.
Napoleon had advanced deep into Russia.
Oh my, 750 kilometers. Wow. Yeah, I mean, he was contemplating on returning back to Prussia / Poland, right? Or maybe staying at Smolensk, right? I mean, what would you do? Probably maybe stay at Smolensk. I don't know. Maybe, but the Russian forces might be getting bigger and Napoleon's army is just sitting there and getting weaker. So, you know, he maybe had to attack or had to retreat, and he chose attack. Fair enough.
Months of marching had left his army decimated by disease and exhaustion.
Yep.
It was now half its original strength, and summer was nearly over. But finally, 70 miles west of Moscow, near the village of Borodino, the Russians had turned to offer battle. Napoleon would have a chance to win the decisive victory that he believed would end the war.
He believed it. Fair enough. But would it though? If he defeated the Russian military army, like he defeated the Austrians, I don't think the Russian would have. They would just either retreat with the army, which would have been in disarray, sure, but then would have just gained more forces and offered him battle more and more and more until he's east of Moscow. And then what? Then what? Yeah, this is just this is snowball effect to the max. Soldiers, here is the battle you have so long desired. Henceforth, victory depends on you. Still motivating though. I mean, you would fight under him. Fair enough.
The Russian army commanded by the 67-year-old one-eyed veteran General Kutuzov.
Wow, one-eyed veteran. I was wondering why his portrait was weird on his right eye. That's pretty awesome. I mean, let's look at the Russian setup here. Okay, it looks pretty decent. They have a lot of entrenchment where their cannon are. They have the river to their right, sort of, by Borodino. They have an open plain to the left. That could be dangerous, although it's forested, so that's probably good for them. It looks like they're concentrating in the center or more right-ish, right? Okay. Let's hope it's not another battle that Napoleon just sweeps them off their
Occupied a
feet.
defensive position across the two main roads leading from Smolensk to Moscow.
Okay.
General Barclay de Tolly's First Army was on the right, its front protected by the Kalatsha River, steep-banked but shallow and easily forded. Prince Bagration's Second Army was on the left, a more open position but reinforced by major earthworks, the Great Redoubt, and what the French nicknamed for their shape, the Flèche.
This looks... It doesn't look similar, but it looks like Wagram, sort of. It's not... I can't see if they're on a high position or not, but they're entrenched, at least, with cannon and infantry, right? So in my mind, if it's the Bloodiest Day, it would have been like Wagram, but 10 times over, right? This looks like a hard position, although his left flank, although they have the Flèche and the Great Redoubt, he can just outflank them on the left flank or right flank, because the water wasn't that deep. But okay.
Another forward redoubt at Shevardino was expected to delay the enemy's advance.
Makes sense.
Historians still dispute the size of the Russian army, but it's likely Kutuzov had around 121,000 men
Wow.
and 680 guns.
Oh
Borodino.
my... That's a big army.
On the 5th of
680 guns.
September, Napoleon's army began to arrive from the west. Around 130,000 men and 585 guns.
Although you see the gun difference there. Okay, Napoleon has... We don't know if these are the exact number, but it's roughly 9,000 more men, but almost 100 less guns. But we know Napoleon knows his cannon, right? Artillery officer, right? So he would probably concentrate his guns on a single point and actually advance his cannon pretty close to the enemy. And the Russian, which we are seeing, probably are spreading their cannon out and not concentrating that much. But okay. Interesting.
Napoleon quickly saw that the Shevardino redoubt would have to be taken before he could deploy his army.
Makes
and
sense.
ordered an immediate assault.
Let's
The
go.
attack was led by Compan's 5th Division of the 1st Corps, supported by the Polish 5th Corps to the south.
He has the Poles fighting for him. Let's go. Okay.
In several hours of heavy fighting, the redoubt changed hands more than once.
Wow.
But late that evening, the Russians finally withdrew to their main line, and the redoubt fell to the French. Its capture had cost them an estimated 4,000 casualties,
Wow.
while the Russians lost around 6,000 men.
Oh my.
Napoleon noted how few prisoners were taken, a worrying sign of the enemy's unbroken resolve.
Yeah.
Both sides spent the next day preparing for battle. Marshal Davout, commanding French First Corps and widely considered Napoleon's most able subordinate, appealed to the Emperor to use his corps to make a wide, outflanking attack to the south.
That's what I said as well. And Ira Marshall, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, right? Although there's a city down there that could be holed up with just a few troops, not a few troops, but less troops than it had to be if it's an open field. There's forest, could hide Cossacks there, or yeah, Cossacks, right? Okay, let's see if Napoleon hears this.
But Napoleon dismissed the idea as too risky, and instead began preparing for a massive frontal assault on the Russian defenses.
I can understand that it being too risky, right? Because if he's going to outflank the Russians, he can't see what we are seeing. And if you look at the Russians' right, it's pretty strong, and their left is pretty weak. And if Napoleon concentrated his force on his right, and his left is weak, then Napoleon could be outflanked as well. Okay, fair enough. But in the center, though, I could not escape the feeling that something huge and destructive was hanging all over all of us. Captain von Linsingen, Westphalian. Okay.
Shortly after dawn on the 7th of September, Orthodox priests paraded one of Russia's holiest icons, Our Lady of Smolensk, before the Russian army.
Amazing.
It was a stirring sight for many devout Russian soldiers.
Yep. And it's not unusual that you have this mass or pray before battle. It's very common. Right? Not only for Christians, Muslims, or Jews, but for Vikings, right? For nomads, praying for something, right? Before battle.
Thousands
amazing.
Of whom would not live to see dusk.
Yeah, that's amazing portrait.
The battle began at 6 a.m. as French batteries opened a deafening cannonade against the Russian defenses.
Yeah, makes sense.
Eugene's 4th Corps advanced on Borodino village, lightly held by Jaegers of the Russian Imperial Guard.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking that they would have done down south, have some Jaegers in the town, right, to just hold back if Napoleon would have outflanked him with a large force, right?
Clearing the village, his infantry crossed the Kalacha and advanced towards the Great Redoubt.
They look
but
very
were driven back with heavy losses.
Makes sense.
The Russians
Exposed.
burned the bridge across the river, but did not launch a counterattack. Eugene was able to move cannon into the village to put flanking fire on the Great Redoubt.
Yeah, that's devastating.
In the center, Davout's 1st Corps began its advance against the Fleche, coming under heavy fire.
I mean, look at this though. It just looks deadly, right? The 1st Corps just advancing at cannon against Bagration, who has cavalry. Of course, the 1st Corps also has cavalry, right? But it just looks like it's not gonna work, like Wagram. But okay, let's see.
While on the right, the Polish 5th Corps, ordered to take Utitsa, got held up in the woods and ravines. Their slow advance allowed Tushkov's 3rd Corps to send a division north to reinforce the Fleche defenses. Kutuzov, at his headquarters in Gorky, took little part in the battle, leaving tactical decisions to his subordinates.
That's a pretty interesting. Why he did that, I don't know. Right? Maybe he thought that, okay, it's better maybe I don't get involved that much because I can't see the entire battlefield where every individual soldier are fighting, like how it looks, right? Maybe he was sick, right? Maybe he thought it was good to do that. I don't know. Okay, that's pretty... It's good in one sense that having less top-down authority because you can't see the entire battlefield. And sometimes you need top-down authority in a battle like this, right? To concentrate the power and to give direct orders, and it will follow through, but okay.
Barclay and Bagration had spent most of the summer arguing furiously over strategy.
That's not good.
At the hour of crisis, they put their differences aside.
There you go.
They could see the main French attack was falling on the Russian center and left. So Barclay ordered General Bagavout's 2nd Corps south to reinforce Bagration.
Okay.
Fighting around the Fleche intensified as the French captured one of the earthworks, only to be driven out by a Russian counterattack.
That's what I'm thinking.
Davout himself was injured in the fighting as he fell from his dying horse.
Oof.
But he refused to leave the field.
Fair enough.
When Russian cavalry counterattacked, Marshal Murat himself led the French cavalry forward to meet them.
Wow. I mean, this battle is just epic. It's just so massive armies just clashing at each other, right? This is just... It would be a slaughter. Doesn't matter if Napoleon uses his wit, right? Uses his military genius. It doesn't matter. It would still be a slaughter, right? Wow.
Ney's Third Corps now joined the attack on the Flèche.
Wow.
A charge by Russian cuirassiers forced Murat to take shelter in a square of Württemberg infantry.
Huh.
Murat, with his flamboyant dress and reckless courage, had now even made a name for himself among the Russians. The Cossacks in particular saw him as a kindred spirit and were eager to capture him alive if they could.
That's pretty cool.
To the south, Polish troops now took Utitsa, which the
Okay.
Russians set ablaze before withdrawing. But General Bagavut's reinforcements arrived just in time to shore up the Russian flank.
Okay.
Around 10 a.m., Eugène launched another attack on the Great Redoubt. It was briefly captured by Morand's 1st Division,
Sure,
before his
but...
men were thrown out by a ferocious Russian counterattack.
Yeah.
The Russian
Wow.
army's 27-year-old artillery commander, General Kutesov, was killed leading one of these counterattacks.
Wow.
A heroic death, but a blow to the organization of Russian artillery for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's a big blow.
Fighting continued to rage around the Flèche earthworks. Some counted as many as 6 major French assaults, involving
Wow.
45,000 troops, with hundreds of cannon on both sides.
I mean, just look at this. Just look at this. It's just devastating. Look at this. You can't even see who's who. You see on the flag, on the standard, right? But still, like, it's just slaughter. Amazing.
Pouring fire into the packed ranks. More than once, French infantry fought their way into one of the Russian positions, only to be driven out again at bayonet point.
Yeah.
Junot's Westphalian Corps was sent forward in support, helping to clear Russian
Okay.
skirmishers from the woods to the south.
That makes sense.
General Bagration was close to the action, overseeing the defense of the Flèche, leading forward reinforcements and ordering counterattacks.
That's good. Risky,
Around
but
10
good.
a.m., he was hit in the leg by shell fragments.
Oof.
Mortally wounded, he was carried from the field.
Wow. I mean, big blows to leadership on the Russian side, right? Bagration, the was it artillery commander, right? Big blows to leadership, although the soldiers are fighting on the Russian side very ferociously, right? Napoleon still have a lot of reserves, which, okay, Russians have some reserves as well. Okay, let's see.
Shaken
I mean, it makes sense if Napoleon just takes his right flank and just outflanks a little bit, but the Russians have reinforcement on their right.
by
Okay.
the loss of their iconic commander, the exhausted Russian infantry began to fall back.
Makes
The
sense.
French finally took the Flèche.
Yeah.
Marshal Murat then led forward Friant's division, First Corps' last reserve, supported by waves of heavy cavalry on both flanks.
Wow.
Russian grenadiers formed squares to ward off the French cuirassiers.
Makes
while their
sense.
own guard cavalry fought the French in a giant confused melee,
Wow.
with heavy losses on both sides. The Russians resisted doggedly, but the combined onslaught of French artillery, cavalry, and infantry
Yeah.
proved irresistible.
That's a slaughter.
As the Russians...
I mean, it's good that they form squares, the Russians, right? Against First Corps cavalry. But when the French bring up guns or cannon, then the squares are no good. But okay.
Russians pulled back. Friant's infantry fought their way into the village of Semyonovskaya. The Russian center was in disarray and seemed close to breaking.
Okay.
Surely now was the time for Napoleon to deliver the knockout blow.
Is it? Soldiers, face to the enemy. Let's go and get killed. French colonel to his men at Borodino. Fair enough. What would you do? I mean, running into Russian forces, just... What do you... Like, maybe God is protecting you, but then what? Right? You just run into bayonets and cannon fire and cavalry charges and infantry fire. Like, that's a fair statement.
For most of the day, Napoleon remained at his headquarters near Borodino.
Interesting.
Those
like the Russian general, right? Both of them seems like they're very inactive, although we don't know, but it seems from the outside looking in, both of them are very inactive.
around him later said that illness, as well as the exertions of the long campaign, had left him tired and irritable.
That makes sense.
As the Russian center buckled, Murat and his staff urged him to send forward his last reserve, the Imperial Guard.
Uh-oh.
The Emperor refused.
Okay.
If there is another battle tomorrow, he asked them, where is my army?
Fair enough. That's
but
fair
he
enough.
did make one exception. Barclay was continuing to move troops from his unengaged right wing to bolster the center.
So attack
As
now.
Osterman Tolstoy's 4th Corps arrived behind the Russian center, French observers feared they were massing for an attack.
Yeah.
So Napoleon ordered forward General Sorbier's Guard artillery.
There you go. That's what I'm thinking. Although Napoleon, as we know, had 100 cannon less than the Russians, but Napoleon's gonna concentrate his guns probably at the squares, and the squares are squares because they're afraid of cavalry charges, because the cavalry are standing right in front of them, right? It makes sense.
His batteries opened a devastating fire on the enemy.
Okay.
Yet even as they were mown down in their ranks, the Russian infantry stood their ground.
Heroic.
On the Russian right wing, all remained quiet, so General Platov, commander of the Don Cossacks, proposed that he lead an attack on the lightly defended Borodino village. Permission received, Generals Platov and Uvarov led a force of 8,000 Cossacks and cavalry across the Kalacha River.
Oh my, it's gonna be a slaughter.
They fell on French and Italian troops around Borodino with complete surprise, spreading panic and disorder. Grouchy's 3rd Cavalry Corps had to be pulled back across the river to drive off the Russians. Russian commanders saw this raid as a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But it had delayed the next French attack by 2 hours.
Fair enough.
May have persuaded Napoleon that he was right to hold back his reserve.
Uh-oh. I had never seen such carnage. General Rapp, Napoleon's aide-de-camp, wounded for 22nd time at Borodino. Oh my.
Around 3 p.m.
I mean, wait, a aide-de-camp wounded 22 times. Wow.
The French launched their biggest assault yet on the Great Redoubt.
Again.
Russian gunners targeted the French infantry advancing to their front, allowing French cavalry to outflank the redoubt.
This is a slaughter.
From the rear.
Yeah. Oh
Saxon
my.
cavalry were first in, cutting down Russian infantry and gunners almost to the last man.
Oh my.
It was an astonishing feat by the horsemen, against all the rules of war.
Yeah.
And testament to the ferocity of the fighting.
Yep.
As Eugene's infantry consolidated their hold on the redoubt, he ordered forward all the available cavalry to exploit this success.
Uh-oh.
But they were met and checked by the last Russian cavalry reserves.
Yeah, but look at all the Russians. They're all almost as squares. At least this is how they depict it. Maybe not all of them were squares, but a lot of them at the front lines are squares, which makes sense because they're on open field, open terrain, right? So they wait and know that cavalry is going to charge them. But however, on open flat terrain, cannon is also very effective because it's gonna bounce, right? It's just a metal ball that's gonna bounce on the ground and hit you. And cannon is very devastating against a square formation.
Eugène now implored Napoleon to commit the Imperial Guard. But again, the Emperor refused.
I mean, can he just attack the right flank? Right? Because Napoleon's left flank is, you know, Kutuzov has he has the Cossacks and he has some infantry and cannon on his right flank. But can't Napoleon just attack with his right flank? Let's see.
I will not destroy my guard, he told his staff.
Okay.
I am 800 leagues from France, and I will not risk my last reserve.
Fair enough, I guess.
By 5 p.m., both armies were in a state of utter exhaustion.
Yeah.
The battlefield was strewn with dead and wounded. Some infantry battalions could muster only a third of their strength.
Oh my.
Cavalry could advance no faster than a trot.
Yeah.
Gun crews were collapsing with fatigue.
Yeah.
As dusk approached, fighting slowly died out across the battlefield.
Makes sense.
Napoleon and the French army expected the fighting to resume the next day. But by dawn, Kutuzov, having learned the full, horrifying scale of Russian losses, had ordered a withdrawal.
Okay. Fair enough.
The losses on both sides were enormous.
Let's see.
Russian casualties are estimated at 44,000.
Oh my.
French losses around 30,000.
Oh my. Yeah, this is a bloody day. Wow. Wow.
Including 49 generals.
Whoa.
12 of them killed.
Wow.
Borodino would prove to be the bloodiest single day of the Napoleonic Wars.
Let's remind ourselves, one day, 74,000 casualty in total, estimated, right? In one day. At this time, 1812. What? Wow.
The Russian army could not fight another battle until it had received major reinforcements.
Yeah.
And so Kutuzov decided that he must abandon Moscow.
Okay.
On the 15th of September, a week after his victory at Borodino, Napoleon entered the city.
Wow.
He would find it virtually deserted, and already the first fires starting to burn.
I mean, that was brutal. Massacre, that was a brutal massacre. I mean, was it decisive? No, not really. Napoleon got Moscow, but by the sounds of it, virtually empty, and the fire started burning. I mean, it doesn't sound like he got something that he thought he was going to get when he got Moscow, right? This is so interesting, right? All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.